To everyone who has will be given more, and he will have more than enough. But from the man who has not, even what he has will be taken away." So I want to, on the basis of this statement of Jesus, examine what it means when we say that God is an all-loving God. I think we're perhaps deceived if we accept the image of one who is always tender, soft, and sweet, because it doesn't, in fact, match this statement, does it? To everyone who has will be given more, and he will have more than enough, but from the man who has not, even what he has will be taken away. I mean, it almost, in fact, it does sound harsh. And economically speaking, you could say that God is not a fan of the redistribution of wealth. That's just a controversial insight you might take away from that. But think of the best teaching that you've had at school. Like, think of the best teachers that you've had at school. I'm going to give you two of mine. I've got many, but I'm going to give you two. One was my maths teacher. Now, he was a bit eccentric. You might say crazy. We sometimes thought he was. And I was certainly afraid of him. Perhaps in the way that the steward with the one talent says he was afraid of the master today. At least at first I was. You see, if you got an answer wrong in his class, it wasn't like, well, just sit down and you'll try harder next time. You got shouted at, like right in your face. Now, I know modern teaching, you're not allowed to do that, and I'm not condoning it, but he would shout and you say, "Wrong, you must try harder." And so you did, because you didn't want that to happen again. But he also knew, because it was me, that I would go away and I would try harder, because I was good at maths. But then I started to notice what he was doing with some of the other students, those who perhaps weren't so good at maths. I got hard questions, and sometimes I tripped up and got them wrong, sometimes I got them right. But when he asked the kids who weren't so good at maths a question, it wasn't difficult. And my sense of justice was piqued. I'm like, how come they get the easy questions and they always get them right? And then when I try, he always gives me a hard question. But then I looked at what he did with the student. When they got that easy question right, he would be like, "You see that, lads? That is a boy who's done his work." And so the boy would feel motivated and work even harder with the one talent he had. What did it do for me? It motivated me to work harder, because I thought, well, I've got my 5 talents. I'm definitely going to make sure that I get praise for the work I do. The kingdom of heaven is like a man who entrusted property to his servant. To one he gave 5 talents, one 2, to one 1. And remember this line from the gospel: each in proportion to his ability. My teacher would test and try us in proportion to the ability we had, and he would spur us on to achieve more. That is what God is doing with his servants in today's gospel. He's not giving them more than they can handle, but rather he knows each individual and tests them so that they may achieve more. He knows us. He doesn't treat us all the same, but rather he treats us into proportion of what we can achieve. Now, my second teacher was my history teacher. And I didn't like history. I liked maths, but I didn't like history. But one thing I was, and am now, is competitive. And so we had this bit of history coursework that we had to do. And I didn't really fancy doing it. Funnily enough, it was on the Royal Docks. I had to go around taking photos at the Royal Docks. And it was marked out of 30. So I did the coursework, I handed it in, and I got 14 out of 30. And it was a C. It was good enough. It was a pass. But he said, "James, that's not good enough. Try again." So I took it back. I got 18, not good enough. I got 21, gave it back. And eventually I got 24, which was an A. And he said, "Great, good enough. I'll take that." But then he got up in front of the class and he started telling the story of this legendary pupil, a pupil who once got 27 out of 30. He made him sound almost mythical, like it wasn't possible, but this student had done the impossible. So at the end of that class, I walked up to my teacher and I said, "Sir, I want my coursework back." And I could see the smile on his face. And he said, "But James, why? You got 24, you got an A." And I said, "Sir, I don't want an A, I want 28. He knew how I ticked. God knows how we tick. He gives us and pushes us in proportion to our ability. He is loving us. If you've got 5, he wants 10 for you, so he will push you. If you've got 2, he wants 4 for you. And if you've got 1, he wants you to get 2. He doesn't care what you're capable of. He just knows that you're capable of more, and because he loves you, because he wants you to be a faithful servant, he will make sure you get there. That's God's love. He discerns our ability and he trusts us with it. And he shows us that he wants us to excel. Good enough is not good enough. The only thing we have to be contributing here is our desire to try, our desire to be bothered. Now, in the gospel today, again, you might be thinking, well, God is so harsh. The servant who, with the 1 talent who buried it, he says, when the master asked him, "What have you done with 1 talent?" He said, "Well, I heard you were a harsh master, that you reap where you've not sown, you gather where you have not reaped. And so I was afraid, and so I hid my talent." And you think, oh, this poor servant. We don't want a God who's fearful. We want a God who's just going to give us a hug and say it's okay. But God sees through this. His response isn't like, "Oh gosh, I didn't realize I was a harsh master." He turns to the servant and says, "You wicked and lazy servant." And then he puts it to the sword, what the servant has said. He says, "So you knew I was harsh, or you thought I was harsh. You knew I did all these things, or you thought I did. And it never occurred to you to invest the talent with the bankers. Instead, you just hid it. You hid it because you couldn't be bothered. You didn't want to try." So this servant is truly the one who has not because God has deprived him, but rather because God has given him what he needs in proportion to his ability, and the servant has given it back. He doesn't want it. He doesn't want to try. Everyone who has will be given more, but from the man who has not, even what he has will be taken from him. This is not a God who is merciless or who is harsh, but a God who wants the best for us and who wants us to draw the best out of ourselves. Good teachers, good parents teach their children to grow up and be autonomous, strong, and independent, to establish their life in the world. So how can we expect God to be any different? How can we expect him not to put us through trials, to put us to the test? It might be hard, it might require a lot of work, but the net benefit is that we grow and we become better and we become that gift to the world. We go forth and multiply. We do God's work for others. We share in his mission. That's what he wants for us. So success, let's put away the doubling of numbers and all that kind of stuff. Success, when we boil down to it, is not about numbers, but it's about an attitude which sees in God someone who wants the best for us and will help us if we decide to give it a go, to give it a try, to recognize with gratitude that each of us has a gift and is called only to use it, to maximize that gift. The grace of God will do the rest. The grace of God will reward us in the trying. And so what I want you to do this week is to think seriously. And, for those of us who are off work or have more time indoors, this is a time to go into your head and into your heart and say, what gifts do I have? What gifts am I not using? Where am I being lazy in my relationship with God and in my duty towards myself and towards others? If we really focus on this, if we really adopt an attitude that I'm going to give the best of what I have, of what God has given me, we'll discover that the God who tests us is not a harsh and loving God, but someone who is on our side every single step of the way. Amen.